Imagine getting a message like this. Just one stark line sent over the wire. A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. That's it. That's the cryptic, chilling telegram that kicked off one of the greatest, most enduring maritime mysteries of all time.
So that's what we're here to do today. We're going to dive deep into the mystery of this silent lighthouse on the island of Ely and more. What really happened out there? You have 3 experienced men, a brand new lighthouse on a remote rock, and then just nothing. Total silence. Let's try to piece it all together.
So, let's set the scene. It's Boxing Day, December 26th, 1900. The weather in the North Atlantic has been absolutely horrendous, but it's finally cleared just enough for the relief ship, the Hesperus, to steam out towards the remote Flannan Isles. On board is a lighthouse keeper named Joseph Moore, returning from his shore leave, ready to swap places with one of his colleagues. But as the island comes into view, a sense of unease starts to creep in. Something just feels wrong. It's way too quiet.
And the very first thing they notice is this. The flagpole is bare. Now you've got to understand, for lighthouse keepers, life is governed by meticulous, ironclad routine. Everything is done by the book, by the clock. And greeting the relief vessel with the flag, that's day one stuff. So for that flag to be missing, well, that's the first real jolt of anxiety. The ship's captain sounds the horn, a loud blast that should bring a keeper running out. But the only reply is the sound of the sea.
Okay, so the horn gets no response. Now they're getting genuinely concerned. They fire off a signal rocket, a massive flare that explodes in the sky, impossible to miss. And again, nothing. Just dead silence from that 75-foot stone tower perched on the cliff. Can you imagine being Joseph Moore right then? He knows his friends are in there. He knows something is terribly wrong. And he's the one who has to get into a small boat and be rowed ashore, his stomach probably just a lead weight.
Moore scrambles up the steep, slippery steps that have been carved right into the cliff face. When he gets to the main compound, he finds the entrance gate is closed, which is normal. The main door to the living quarters is also shut tight. Okay, so far so good. But then he reaches the final door, the one into the kitchen, and it's wide open. And that makes absolutely no sense. In a place constantly battered by wind and sea spray, you just don't leave doors hanging open. It's the first truly bizarre, contradictory clue. He steps inside, and this deep, damp chill just hits him. He looks over at the hearth, and the fire is long dead. The ashes are cold and gray. It clearly hasn't been lit for days. And then he notices what might be the creepiest detail of all. Every single clock in the lighthouse has stopped. They've all just wound down. It's as if time itself just gave up and died on the island. This wasn't something that happened suddenly. It was like the very life of the place had slowly, quietly faded away.
And this final discovery, this is really the heart of the whole mystery. Moore makes his way all the way to the top of the tower, to the lamp room, and everything is in perfect order. The huge glass lens is polished and gleaming, the wicks are trimmed, the oil reservoirs are filled right to the brim, all ready for the coming night. They did all their work. They meticulously prepared the light. And then they just vanished. Sometime between finishing their duties and striking the match to light the lamp, they were gone. So to even begin to understand what could have happened, we need to know who these men were and what kind of a strange, isolated world they were living in. What was it really like to be on that rock, at the absolute edge of the world?
Right, so these were not novices. These were seasoned professionals. You had James Ducat. He was the principal keeper, 43 years old, a guy with 20 years of experience under his belt, with a wife and 4 kids waiting for him at home. Then there was Thomas Marshall, his second assistant, younger, at 28. And the third man was an occasional keeper, Donald MacArthur, a tough-as-nails 40-year-old ex-soldier, just filling in for a colleague who was out sick. So we are talking about 3 capable, reliable men.
And their post, Ely and Moore, was unbelievably isolated. The name means Big Island in Gaelic, which is a bit of an overstatement. It's really just a barren chunk of rock sticking straight out of the North Atlantic, 17 miles from the nearest shoreline. If you were to stand on the western edge and look out, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, but 2,000 miles of furious, open ocean until you hit North America. This wasn't just an island. It was a fortress against the sea. And the island itself had this strange reputation, going back centuries before the lighthouse was ever built. It was considered an otherworldly, almost sacred place. A writer back in 1695 noted that local lore spoke of pygmies or little men that inhabited the island. Visitors had these strange rituals they had to follow, like never killing an animal there. So even before 3 men disappeared from it, Ely and Moore was already a place steeped in superstition and a kind of deep, eerie strangeness.
Okay, so this is absolutely crucial. Over the past century, the story of what happened here has been layered with all sorts of dramatic, spooky, and frankly, completely false details. So to get to the truth, we first have to do some myth-busting and strip away all the fiction that has made this mystery so famous.
And this, right here, is Exhibit A. It's the most sensational piece of evidence, and you've probably heard it before. These supposed logbook entries paint this terrifying picture of psychological collapse. You've got one keeper becoming irritable, another a hardened soldier breaking down and crying, they're praying through a storm, and then that final cryptic line, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." It's incredible stuff, and it is a complete and total invention.
So let's look at the reality. According to the official investigation, there were no dramatic emotional entries. The keeper's log was kept on a slate, and it was filled with mundane weather notations, wind direction, barometric pressure, that kind of thing. The very last entry was made at 9 a.m. on December 15th, and it was written by the principal keeper, James Ducat. There was absolutely no mention of crying, praying, or anything out of the ordinary. This spooky logbook was almost certainly made up for a pulp magazine story decades after the fact.
And the same goes for all those stories about the scene inside the lighthouse. The popular myth describes a half-eaten meal left on the kitchen table, a chair knocked over, as if the men fled in sudden terror. But again, the official report from the superintendent who investigated says the exact opposite. He wrote that the pots and pans were all cleaned and put away, and the kitchen was tidied up. In fact, the entire station was found in perfect, orderly condition. It wasn't a scene of panic, it was a scene of discipline.
So, now that we've cleared away the ghost stories of the logbook and the chaotic kitchen, what were the real clues? What did the investigators actually find? Well, this is where the true and honestly far more powerful story really begins to emerge. We have to look at the rock itself.
At the island's west landing, they found evidence of just incredible violence. But it wasn't human violence. Thick iron railings were bent and twisted like paper clips, ripped right out of their concrete foundations. A heavy supply box that had been jammed into a crevice in the rock for safety was just gone. And maybe most incredibly, a massive block of stone weighing more than a ton had been picked up and thrown across a pathway.
To really grasp the kind of force we are talking about here, just think about this number, 110 feet. That's the height above sea level, about the height of a 10-story building where a lifebuoy that was securely fastened to the railings was completely torn away. Not untied, ripped to shreds. The investigators found little pieces of its canvas still attached to the ropes. This was not a normal storm. This was the ocean declaring war on the island.
But maybe the single most telling clue of all was found back inside the lighthouse. Ducat and Marshall's heavy oilskin coats were gone, which makes sense if they went outside into the storm. But Donald MacArthur's coat was still hanging on its peg. This means that a tough, experienced man ran out into a furious Atlantic gale in nothing but his shirt sleeves. And the huge question is, why? Why would he do that?
All right, so when you put all the real clues together, the immense storm damage, the perfectly tidy kitchen, and MacArthur's abandoned coat, you can start to construct the most plausible and, frankly, the most tragic scenario for what happened on that rock on December 15th, 1900. This theory, which was actually developed by a later keeper who served on the island, it just fits every single piece of evidence. The idea is this. The main storm has passed. Ducat and Marshall go down to the west landing to check on their supply crate. A freak wave, a rogue one, comes out of nowhere, surges up the cliff, and sweeps one of them into the ocean. The other man scrambles back towards the lighthouse, screaming for help. Inside, MacArthur hears the panic. He doesn't think, he just acts. He grabs a rescue rope and sprints out the door. No time to grab a coat, his friend is in mortal danger right now. But as he and the other survivor are on the landing, another, even bigger wave strikes and washes both of them away.
And if you're thinking there's no way a wave could be that big, think again. Another keeper stationed on Island Moore in the 1950s actually managed to photograph waves during a storm breaking clean over the very top of the 150-foot island, reaching a height of almost 200 feet. So these monster waves are not just a theory, they are a terrifying documented reality of life on that rock.
So, we have a logical, evidence-based solution. It's a story of duty, the terrifying power of nature, and a desperate, heroic rescue attempt gone wrong. And yet,
The mystery endures, doesn't it? If a giant wave is the answer, why does the silence from Flannan Isles still haunts us over a century later? Maybe it's because no bodies were ever recovered. Or maybe it's just that the thought of 3 men being silently erased from existence with no one to see and no one to hear leaves a kind of quiet that no explanation can ever truly fill.